Okay, hello. My name is Chris. I am a digital nomad expat living in Cambodia. I'm also a former chief technology officer at an ad agency at the States. I was most recently doing that for the past 3 years and did pretty well with that. Was featured in a case study by Cloudflare, was a keynote speaker at Google Amp's mobile conference in Amsterdam about a year and a half ago, speaking on data and artificial intelligence. Not artificial intelligence, but talking about data tracking, that kind of thing. Anyway, not the point of the thing, but we're gonna get into technology, so it's kind of my background. I very drunkenly last night posted this question. That's weird. The camera's on there. This question: what would you do if you thought you were a video game character? This is something that I think about a lot, and I got some pretty interesting responses, which I thought probably deserved a more long form look at it. So you guys might think this is interesting. This is actually probably one of the things that people call me crazy about. One of many, anyway. So first of all, the responses that we got, which I can't show on the screen because mobile doesn't work, but on mobile. So from it's Kelsey _ 2. If she was a video game character, she would kill myself, and see if I'm reborn at start. I like to live dangerously. Halamo.last says, die and get another chance at life. To be honest. Another Maria Boklak says, I probably mispronounced that. Become an assassin. And Luke Min Klein says Metal Gear Solid. Plus a couple other ones. But anyway, the common thread in this response was that if you're a video game character, most people would kill themselves and become an assassin of some sort, or try to make a leap into some sort of more badass role, I guess. And which makes sense. Why wouldn't you? What's interesting about what all those too is that like this concept that you could live a more exciting life, or maybe be doing something differently, or that when you die you can just come back and do it again. I think that we're living in a simulation, and that essentially in that way we are video game characters in and of ourselves. And so that kind of dictates a lot of how I live my life and a lot of the actions I take. But I'll back up a little bit to explain how I got there. So first of all, I grew up Mormon. I was devout until I was 26. So I, went to church every Sunday for 3 hours, didn't drink, smoke, drink coffee or tea, went home teaching, paid my tithing, served a mission for 2 years, was baptized, went to the temple, went to the Mormon college, got married very young when I was 22, maybe 23. Anyway, and did the whole thing. But that's not the point of the video. If there's interest, I can go into that in another video. But the thing that you need to know first is that like I for as long as I'm 30 now. I left the church when I was 26, so it's been 4 years. But for the better part of my life, I've been a very like faith-led, devoted type of person. A sense of purpose is very much instilled in you from a very young age, and I kind of got doubled up on that with the Chinese sense of purpose. Family honor and be something great, and then be good for Jesus, blah blah. But to myself and probably a lot of people out there, having a sense of meaning, having a sense of purpose, feeling like you're walking around doing whatever you're doing to benefit, for a reason, I think is important. And it's been interesting leaving the faith and having to rediscover that, because I think a lot of people go through their adolescence, maybe can figure out why I'm here on earth, what is the meaning of life, and they've had their whole life to kind of piece together what they were thinking about it. But when you leave something so drastically and you've gone from one outlook into very much a different one, you kind of have to immediately go through all that process at once, which is something that I didn't really anticipate when I left the Mormon church. I think you anticipate that maybe you'll lose some friends, some family, blah blah, a lot of the support structure, blah blah. But I did not anticipate losing, like, why am I here? Fast forward, and I found a lot of purpose temporarily in my work, and I think that's where we saw a lot of success at the Johnson Group. But I've had a lot of time to kind of like think about all this for a while. One of the things that I've loved about living in Cambodia is that it's easier to go slow, and you can take the day and the afternoon and think. If you have like a Western income or something like that, and so I need something to believe in. I need when I have conviction about something, I generally perform very well, and so I needed to feel like I had a reason for being here. And what's interesting about religion, which we spent a lot of time studying other religions on my mission and in college, is that there's often common threads in a lot of religions. Life after death, a creator. Lots of religions have reincarnation in there. Certain values, saved by works or by faith, blah blah. So there's a lot of common threads across time and history and geographies. When societies weren't communicating at all, like there's still these similar principles, which is interesting to think about. We'll get back to that. My background is technology, so it makes sense that I gravitate towards technology as like my new sense of purpose, as it was. And the interesting thing is that I started to get really heavy into artificial intelligence, which I do a terrible job talking about. We can do another video on that as well. But artificial intelligence, to be brief, basically learns by running trillion, million, gazillion simulations of something. So in order to be the best at chess, it just played a million games of chess until it practiced every single possible thing, knew every single possible way to counter it, and now it can beat any player in chess. I mean, now we just have AIs playing AIs to see who can be the fastest AI. If any, it's no contest in chess, and we're getting more and more advanced in in our ability in artificial intelligence to do much more complex things like drive cars, which involves, I don't think people think about this, which involves predicting human behavior. We got to think about that. Someone remind me to do a video about that too. But self-driving cars is about predicting human behavior and doing a very complex thing. Blah de blah. AI is changing the world. And when you start getting into ethical discussions about it, a lot of these guys, Elon Musk and a lot of very smart, intelligent people, way smarter than me, believe in this thing called the simulation theory, which is essentially that we are living in a simulation, kind of like The Sims, with the concept being that I don't know why I've got my desktop open. I guess I was gonna like bring open facts and stuff, but I guess I'm not. Anyway, the concept being that in just the past 40 years we had Pong, which is like this 2D game, and then fast forward to now we have basically photorealistic VR. So I don't know if you've ever played VR, but if you put the goggles on, it feels pretty real. And assuming any rate of advancement in technology, that's just 40 years, right? So let's assume we do the same in the next 40 years, but really we're accelerating at a very, very fast rate. Or let's say it takes us 1,000 years, but at some point we're going to be able to get VR that feels like real life. And that gets into a lot of the ability to read the brain and write to the brain and blah, blah, which we are doing. I can do a video on that too. Not we are, just the human race is smarter people than me. And so this concept of like Ready Player One, if you saw that, is entirely plausible. And the idea is that perhaps humans haven't been around in this universe as we know it for a very long, compared to many other living things. It's unlikely that we are the first living thing to ever get to this point in technological advancement. It's been relatively a short amount of time. Maybe another human race in one of the millions of possible places where life could be existing in the infinite universe got the internet first, maybe a million years before us. And if that's possible, they probably got to the whole VR Ready Player One scenario first anyway. And more than likely, they're playing us, or we are some sort of, simulation of life. Because it's unlikely that we're truly the first ones, because we're on the cusp. We're going to become interplanetary. We're doing some really advanced things with technology, and if we are the first one, it would be quite remarkable. I think what did Elon Musk say? Maybe three in a billion chance or something like that. But more than likely, we're being simulated, and it's an interesting concept, I guess, to unpack. In that, perhaps there's people out there. It's pretty. In order for all this to feel real, which is what we've been doing, with VR, we're trying to get as realistic as possible, and that's what 4D theaters, and we always want to feel as real as possible. You jump yourself into a simulated world where pain exists, where it feels real, where fear and love and all those things, risk, exist, which is interesting. Blah de blah. Maybe that sounds a little gloom and doom, and to me that does. I'd like to think that someone isn't just up there playing me specifically, making me do things, or however it would go in that scenario. My personal philosophy is a little bit different. I was trying to look to see how long it's been recording, but I have no idea. But it's going to be a long video. When you start getting into ethical discussions about AI, there's this common thing that we're all building towards, which is called this artificial superintelligence. It's basically when we create an AI that's as smart as a human or smarter than a human, the whole world changes in an instant. Because you've got this brilliant person that's smarter than the entirety of the human race that can also do things at speed as a computer, and suddenly the world changes. This would be akin to a world before and after flight. So before flight, you would talk about, oh yeah, and then we're going to go, fly across there, and it would be unimaginable. People would say that the world doesn't operate that way. And it didn't. The world didn't until it did. Until someone invented flight, and it changed the entire way that the world worked. And many inventions do that. The internet has done that, and many others. So we're building towards this artificial superintelligence, and whether or not that's a good idea or bad is a discussion for policymakers, I guess. In my eyes, we're going forward at an alarmingly unregulated and quick rate. Especially the bigger companies with bigger funding, like Google and Facebook and many others, other Apple, are doing really incredible things with AI, and are far ahead than most of the other competitors. Mostly in that the conceptual understanding of how to use data to train AI is a philosophical one that's maybe a closely guarded secret. In order to, anyway, we won't talk about that. So anyway, when you're talking about, you kind of get into this iRobot situation, where you're trying to decide, if we do make this artificial superintelligence, what do we teach it to make sure that it doesn't destroy us all? And you can say something like, just make sure that we're all happy. But that won't work, because perhaps we'll just end up getting strapped down to boards with dopamine firing in our heads all day, and we'll be happy as a clam, but miserable. And there's many examples of that. There's also the complexity of that. We're trying to imagine a world that we literally can't imagine, because it's like we're living in the days pre-flight, and we cannot imagine what it will be like when this thing happens. So any rule that we might be placing, and that happens in science all the time. Science is wrong sometimes. We thought that the Earth was the center of the universe for a while, and then we thought that, need to do science changes. And so when we try and create these rules for this thing that might destroy us all or lead us into utopia, it's basically one or the other. It gets complex. And in my mind, I think that there would be someone standing over this AI that is perhaps looking at this button and is talking to her and just says, in order for you to understand that when I say just lead us into that utopia and not to our doom, you've got to know what being human is, what humanity is and what it means when I say that. Because it doesn't matter what words I use, there's a meaning behind it. But in order for you to understand what that means, you've got to understand being human. And perhaps if this AI followed the same models that we're using today, that AI would go off and simulate trillions and millions and all sorts of different variations of humanity, trying to understand what it means. And in this scenario, it's the one where I put on a white shirt, and then there's one where I, dyed my hair blue, or Trump got elected or not, or, In that way, it still holds true to a lot of the common threads that we were talking about earlier with religion. There's reincarnation, because as soon as the simulation is done, and then you're up again. There is a creator, in that it's the person wanting to understand us. In a real way, I would like to think that creator loves us and wants us to be good. Because the simulation that does the best is the one that wins. So obviously they would want us to be good. And it doesn't really matter, though, when you think about it. All that to be said. Because faith is just an action word. We used to say that a lot in the Mormon church. It's something that you believe in that drives you to action. So if you have faith in Jesus Christ, then you are baptized, because that's what he said to do. If I have faith that we are a simulation and little bits of code, then that still drives me to action. And as long as I feel like no matter what you are, no matter what your faith is, whether it's in Jesus or code or anywhere in between, as long as you're not hurting anybody and genuinely trying to be good, I think that's fine. I don't think we have to be ashamed of faith. It's not trendy because of the many atrocities that traditional faith has, or not faith, religions and organizations have caused. But it is important. I think there's strength in faith, and I think there's strength in conviction and believing in something. And so, whether or not I'm right or wrong, this isn't really the point of the video. I think the point of the video is really just to explain a little bit about me and where I'm coming from. Because if you truly believe you're just a simulation or just a little line of code, you're just a random thing. And life can be spent in a cubicle doing boring things, but I've always attacked it at very much a reckless and risky manner, which is not for everybody. And it's certainly full of failure and pain. But it doesn't necessarily feel reckless to me. It just feels like a way of life. And sometimes I think, drunkenly, when I'm... sometimes I think, what would I do if I was a video game character? Because I feel like I am. So it's for better or for worse. For most people around me, it's for worse, but for me, it's really interesting, and a fun way to go about things. It's a bit crazy, I guess, eh? The crazy part is the next part, where one of those other common threads are instances where humans have achieved some sort of technological or enlightenment feat and somehow ascend and to just disappear off the face of the planet. You see that in the Bible and the Egyptians and all over. And you always wonder what they did, whether or not it happened. But it's just weird that it happens so much, you know, and perhaps because what essentially happens once this artificial superintelligence is made, if it goes well, if it goes into the utopia way, we become godlike in a way. It just enables us. I mean, we have fake hearts right now, and you know, organs and blah blah. It just suddenly enables us to become conceptually godlike in our abilities, and very much it feels like an ascension in the way. I wonder if we get there, what'll happen, and that excites me. That's why I love working on it. That's why I love doing what I do and playing around. I do it at a much slower pace because I like naps, but it's been fun to be part of that research. Artificial intelligence has, you know, been around for ever since machines were invented, but it's still just this fascinating field. And finally, we have this computing power to actually make a lot of these conceptual things and put them in practice. And that's one of the fun things that we're working on. So, I'm interested in building that. I'm interested in experimenting with that. It's expensive. Programmers are expensive. All that knowledge is expensive, but I think it's fun. There's a lot of interesting things we're doing that kind of blur the lines of reality. I'll try and link to some stuff down below. We've got, you know, we can basically simulate your face if you've got enough data, and your voice and your typing ability, and you can simulate a lot of a person in a lot of ways. And those mini projects have been fun to work on, and you get into these really weird discussions about if you copy every bit about a person but not their actual soul, whatever that is still the same as the other one, and we can get into some discussions, but I should cut it off right now and just let you know that I think that we're video game characters. I don't think we should all become assassins or kill ourselves, but perhaps test a little more and put an interesting swing on this version of life we're stuck in, because it's going weird already, you know. Might as well. That's me. I'm Chris. I'm a weird guy in Cambodia, and talk to me about stuff. I know. Oh, wait, subscribe and like. Really, leave comments, please. Okay, bye.